And again, there's always that delay, so by now we should be good. So hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast. I am Michael, and I am here tonight to do a Detention show, which is our every other week sort of talk show. We talk about role-playing games and other silly stuff. Joining me tonight is Kalum from the Rollies podcast. Kalum, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And then we have a special guest co-host tonight. It's Susannah from the Thornvale podcast, which is a Monster of the Week actual play. Susannah, say hello to everyone.
Hey, what's up, Bill?
So, anyone who's watching now or maybe in the future may not be as familiar with you as they are with me and Caleb. So, who are you? What do you do? Tell us about your show.
Yeah, so I am somewhat new to RPGs. I only really started doing it like a year and a half maybe ago, and I can talk about that later if you want. But yes, but since then I started listening to the first RPG podcast I ever listened to was the Adventure Zone, like so many others.
Yep.
And I loved it, and I really enjoyed it. And they started playing Monster of the Week, and as soon as I started playing, I was like, I'm a writer, and I've got this world that I've been wanting to play with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can use this game to play with my world. And I immediately started recruiting people, and I dragged my husband into it, and he likes RPGs. He was the reason I got started with RPGs. And then I sent out to my voice acting friend Wesley, and I was like, hey, you're joining me for this new podcast. And he's like, okay. And then I was trying to find one more person, and I sent out a message to the Facebook ether to my friends and said, hey, I'm starting this podcast. Does anyone sound interested? And exactly the person I was hoping that would be interested in sent me a message and said, hey, I'm interested. I'm like, yes, you're going to be in my podcast.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's how Thornvale started, and it's set in the universe of my Dragon Knights series, which is ironically coming out after the podcast because it takes a long time to edit books.
Yes, I imagine so.
So that series should be coming out in October.
So where can people find your podcast if they want to listen to it? Is it the usual places?
Yeah, it's everywhere. The fastest way you can find it is Anchor, and then Spotify is like 20 minutes later.
Okay.
We use Anchor to host, so I usually post the Anchor links because those update like instantaneously.
Okay.
Versus it takes a couple of hours to get everywhere else. So, and I usually post like 3 or 4 hours ahead of time from when I say I'm going to post it. Because I'm hoping that when I post the link, like if people don't want to listen on Anchor, they can go to the other ones and they're already updated.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it works, but.
So how long have you been doing the show then?
We started on May 3rd. I'm looking at my calendar. 3rd, yeah. Friday, May 3rd.
All right, so very new.
Yes.
Is it every week, twice a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are for the rest of my life. I'm going to be hopefully.
And again, this is like a full campaign. It's ongoing, same characters, same world.
Yes.
All right, very cool. And I'm sure we'll get
players, and they protect the small town of Thornvale. They're 3 monster hunters. They protect this little town. I figured the other series I wrote was the name was based off of the town, so I figured I would name the same thing.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm very excited to talk a little bit more about your show, and then you're going to be bringing some of the stuff we talk about. But Caleb, just in case someone isn't as familiar with you, give us a short pitch on the Release podcast as well.
Well, the Rollies podcast is all about people who play role-playing games, not only D&D, but a number of other games. I'm myself an immigrant in London, coming from Belgium, so my first language was French, so I use that in my show to introduce people across communities. And the pitch of the show is that it's a proudly London-based show of tabletop RPG fans across the channel, the pond, and beyond, because we've got loads of visitors coming to London, and when they come, I'm happy to interview them in person rather than do Skype and stuff. So, for instance, hopefully next week I'm interviewing a Finnish RPG fan. Who she just started playing role-playing games, because that's also that the role is. We got seasoned players and we got brand new players, and yeah, the only thing is that I got a big editing backlog, so if I interview someone next week,
Dude, I feel that.
she will be the proud first episode of 2020.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's, man.
Oh man.
That is hardcore.
My next episode was recorded in Barcelona, actually, with the RPG club there. And my current episode was recorded at MCM Comic Con London when Critical Role visited us there.
Mhm.
And yeah, interview even, well, not, I guess it doesn't count as interview when you stand up with the, you grab the microphone of the panel and you ask a question in the middle of the audience. But I asked a number of casts of shows and films if they ever played any role-playing games, and there are some revelations which are interesting.
All right, very, very cool. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you. And again, for anyone who might be watching or listening now or in the future, the Release Podcast was one of the proud members of the RPG Academy Network, which sadly no longer exists. But Kalum himself is still part of the faculty. He's one of the few that has been still very much involved in what we do outside of the network. So very happy to have Kalum part of part of the family, the faculty, even if the network itself no longer exists. All right.
With film studies.
Right,
And
and other things like detentions. But let's get into the show. So the first thing we like to do is a short segment we call "What You Drinking." So Susannah, I'll start with you. What you drinking?
Okay. So I remembered that you had this, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be boring. I'll be drinking my vitamin water." And then today I went downstairs to go check my mail, and there was a box of booze that was sitting on my plate, and I'm like, "Well, that's strange. I didn't order a box of booze," and so I saw that it was for the box had like the name of the apartment that was right next to mine, and so I brought it over and I knocked on the door thinking, oh, they probably like they probably delivered it to my house instead of theirs, or my apartment instead of theirs. So I knocked on the door and these people ended up moving, and they said, oh yeah, we just put it there because we're planning on taking it downstairs to throw it away. And I'm like, well, if you're throwing it away, can I have it? And so this was the only thing I could find that I liked, and this is passion fruit Rita, which is a sparkling margarita, and I drink that. Why not?
Absolutely.
It's free. It's free.
Again, yeah, free. Free is free. So quick shout out to New York Tater. He's one of our regulars who joins us. He's in chat, so welcome, New York Tater. All right, Kalum, what are you drinking?
well, I'm totally topping everyone. It's 2 in the morning here in London. Thank you very much. And I'm drinking just some water.
Well, I am right there with you. I got a little sparkling H2O myself. Again, I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink alcohol ever, anyways. Sometimes I have soda, but for now, got some water. All right, so now we're going to move into the first official part of the show, and this is what we call extracurricular. And basically, we're just going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. Usually, it's movies, TVs, books, songs on the radio, new games we're playing, new podcasts we've checked out. But it can literally be anything that you want to spend a few minutes talking about. Caleb's showing me his chest for some reason. So I'll start with Caleb on this one. What's been going on, buddy? Extracurricular. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I was pointing not at my chest, like the fools looking at the finger when I point at the moon. I'm showing my beautiful T-shirts of Hawkins, Power and Light from Stranger Things.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Man, I just finished that.
Yeah, I totally did not get that.
I did not finish the third season yet, but yeah. I think people have noticed on Twitter that Will Byer is very keen on playing D&D this season.
Yes. Can we just play D&D?
My theory is that you should offer to play some Vampire the Masquerade, so the girlfriends and the girlfriends could join. First of all, why the girlfriends are not joining? They should be invited. And second, yeah, it could be much more smooching if they were playing Vampire the Masquerade than Dungeons and Dragons.
What episode are you on?
I'm episode 8, I think. Oh, actually, no. Well,
that'd be the last one.
Yeah, it's the next one I'm gonna watch will be the last one. So it's a
movie. Dude, I can't say things.
Yep.
No.
I want to say things so bad, but I can't, so I'm not gonna. I just finished episode 8 like 2 days ago, and man, it was oof, guys.
Yep.
A good season. They sort of turned everything to 11. I was thinking Spinal Tap, not even Stranger Things. And yeah, they definitely go for the 80s, and things get a bit crazier. Not necessarily just with the supernatural. I think they did a good job. I think the next one is the last one. I expected this one to be the last. I'm curious how they're gonna top that, but it's really enjoyable, I find.
Yeah, the first season of Stranger Things, again, it kind of came out of nowhere. This whole Netflix thing, like no one even knew what it was. And I remember, like, I started seeing things on Twitter, people talking about, "Hey, have you seen this?" And it just sort of snowballed into this phenomenon. And I loved season one. I mean, just 100%. Oh my God, it was amazing. Season two, I thought was a bit of a sophomore slump. There were parts of it I really liked, but overall, I thought it was kind of a downward
There
trend.
was an entire episode they could have just not had in season 2.
Yeah, well, they were trying to do a backdoor pilot and make another show about this other character who's one of the other,
It wasn't a good idea.
No, it was not a good idea. But I think season three is a return to form.
Yes.
I still don't know if it's as good as season one, just because I love season one so much. But it's close, if not right there.
And you've seen all of season
Yes.
3.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Cool.
I have seen it all.
What'd you think of, without spoiling it, what'd you think of the end credits scene?
I liked it, but at the same time, I was like, do we need this? I don't know. Again, I don't want to say anything because, like, Kalum, I don't want to spoil it. So we'll might have to revisit that. Yeah.
About.
Yeah. But anyway.
Also, does anyone know the name of the guy, of the Russian guy that kept beating on Hopper? Or are we just going to call him the Terminator?
He's just the Terminator. Yeah. Pretty much straight up. All right. So anything else, Kalum, going on you want to talk about?
Also, I'm finishing. I'm trying to finish the Avatar trilogy. Somebody told me, by the way, that it's not a trilogy but a tetralogy. So I'm like, but it's quite cool. The main character, Midnight, is in the Hades, in the underworld, so the realm of miracle. I don't know if the two of you are familiar with that, because yeah, no, because Michael, you're more of a D&D nerd than I am. So it's set in the world of the Forgotten Realms. Quite like the concept. Two gods stole the two tablets of fate and destiny from the main god, who got mad, and not knowing who stole it, he threw all the gods in the realm of the humans in avatars, telling them, well, you are condemned to live among the humans until you find the tablets. And because of that, everything is a mess. Magic is a mess. There's a lot of plagues and crazy magical effect going on. And you follow the main character are humans. They run into Mistra at some point, and they need to find the tablets. And one of the characters who start, let's say, chaotic, neutral, already quite chaotic evil, his name is Cyric. So that I knew before reading, that Cyric is the name of a deity of, I believe, murder or something. So I expect that. Well, I really like his arc, actually.
All right.
Cool.
Very, very cool. So New York Tater mentions that it's 9 p.m. in his place and he's drinking coffee, and he watched the entire Stranger Things on the 4th. So he can not be spoiled with it. All right. So awesome. Thank you, Kalum. All right, Susannah, what's been going on? What do you want to talk about?
Well, so I guess the biggest thing in my life is that my apartment hasn't been heated or hasn't been cooled for a week, and it's been like in the 90s. And they finally fixed it today. And I mean, it was so hot, like I couldn't even stay here. I've been coming back like once a day to take care of my cats. But I've been mostly like staying at my parents' house because it's just so freaking hot at my apartment. So they finally fixed it. So now I have cool air, and now I'm leaving again.
Yeah, that would be miserable.
I'm going down to Paris Island for a buddy's Marines boot camp graduation. So.
Oh, very cool.
So
awesome.
Mostly today I've just been editing. It's the episode I'm on, episode 12, is the finale of the arc that we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an hour and a half long, which is too long. It was like 2.5 hours before I cut out a lot. We had like 30 solid minutes of just recorded technical difficulties.
Oh no.
Which is kind of entertaining to listen to, because it was a lot of me going, just frustrated. But yeah, so that's been fun today, but I have to get it done today because my episode goes out on the 5th, and then I'm going to be traveling for the next 2. Friday. It goes out on Friday. Good Lord.
Yeah.
The 12th, I think. So I'm going to be traveling the next few days, so I can't edit then. So I got to edit now so I can do other stuff.
No,
Editing stuff.
Yeah, edit. If you get into the podcast game, edit. It just takes over your life.
Never ending. Yeah.
Never ending.
Just be a streamer.
I also
easier.
saw Spider-Man, the new one.
Yes.
Have you seen it yet?
Yes, that's one of the things I was going to talk about. So what'd you think?
Good. It's so good. That's another one. The one thing about it that annoys me is that the end credit sequence. Did you guys see the end credit sequence?
Yes. So again, so if we're going to talk about it, to anyone listening, potential spoilers, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah. I'm not going to spoil anything. I was just going to say, like, I saw people like leaving my theater.
Yeah, it's like,
and I'm like, why are you doing this? And then the end credit sequence literally changes the context of great swaths of the movie.
Yeah, it basically recontextualizes the entire movie.
It does.
Yeah.
It's just like something they've never done before either, which is crazy.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was weird is that the whole time I was watching it, I'm like, oh, it's so sad that there's a couple characters that just didn't seem right. I'm like, whoever wrote this doesn't know how to write their characters, or maybe they just, phoned it in. And then when you see what you see, I'm like, oh my God, that is so amazing. I was so excited.
It was great, man.
It is great. And then, and again, so this is very potentially spoiler. So if you haven't watched it, it's going to be vague, but it could still potentially
for a second.
It could potentially spoil you. In the previews, one of the characters says a line that says ours, and in the actual movie he says yours, and that's a very big deal once you know what's going on. It's when Spider-Man first meets Quentin Beck, and they're talking about where he's from. There's a line that one of the characters says, yeah, yours. In the previews they say ours, and I think that's very intentionally.
Marvel's so freaking sneaky.
Yeah, I know.
Like in Endgame, there's no way nobody's seen Endgame at this point. The only person I know that hasn't seen Endgame is my friend that's been in Marine boot camp the last couple of months.
Yeah.
So in Endgame, in the commercials, when the scene where he's struggling with Captain America, like Thanos is struggling with Captain America, you can see the number of stones on his hand, and he doesn't have all of them. And then in the movie, he had all of them at the time.
Yep.
So they completely threw you off balance, like expecting what was going to do, just straight up lying to you.
There's also previews of where Cap has his shield, and in the movie, that's when his shield's half destroyed, and it's only half there. So they had to go in and actually add the rest of that. So in the preview, it looked like his shield was whole, and you didn't know that it had already been cut in half.
I mean, did you yell with joy?
Maybe we shouldn't talk about Endgame because your buddy in the chat there hasn't seen it. Somehow.
Oh, just watch Infinity War this week. Okay, all right. Yeah. It's really good, though. It's really good.
It's really good.
At some point, his shield gets cut in half.
I think twice. I would say, I think Infinity War is a better movie, from a screenwriting perspective. But Endgame hit me in the feels a lot more.
Yeah.
And I had a lot more, fun with Endgame.
Yeah.
Infinity War was, a super fun movie, and there's a very good reason for that. But, oh, man, Endgame was good.
Yeah, Endgame is a crazy thing in terms of production, I find, because, I mean, the first Avenger came out pretty much at the time I moved to London, so in 2012. And watching Endgame is how it's been this thing which has been part of your life for 7 years now. And it's super... On one hand, it's super impressive as storytelling. And I mean, we've got Game Masters tonight, so people know how difficult it is to take all your threads and bring them together to end your campaign. And they definitely do that on so many levels. And it's very rewarding if you're a fan and you notice a few details. It's still working if you didn't. And it's just this weird. I think there's been serials in the past more than people realize, but things which having a movie like this, which relies so much on you having seen I don't even remember 30 hours, 24 hours of movie connected and rewarding you for that. It's really, really unique, and yeah, it's fascinating. And I went to see it twice, and I think I even enjoyed it more the second time. So why it was still hitting me in the feels right from the
Yeah.
first scene as a father.
Oh,
So,
Oh,
yeah, it's
yeah.
it's pretty crazy. I think the biggest thing I would say about Endgame, and I'm a sucker for the Marvel movies, like even the bad ones I like.
Yeah, yeah.
But after Endgame, the first thing I wanted to do is go back and watch all the movies again, which I have now
yeah,
done. Like I
Oh, wow.
including
That's a
Thor: The
long
Dark
day.
World and Avengers: Ultron, which are not the best. They're better now. Endgame made those movies retroactively better.
Yeah, they absolutely did.
So I thought
yeah.
that was pretty impressive. But yeah, Spider-Man: Far From Home, absolutely loved it. Again, I'm in the wheelhouse of those movies, but I love Spidey. He's one of my favorite characters as a kid.
It's my favorite.
Reading the comic books, so I think Tom Holland does an amazing job as Peter Parker. I love him. I love that movie, and then I love Mysterio. I love how they did it. I liked everything
Yes.
about it. It all worked for me perfectly. And again, both of the end credit scenes just like blew my freaking mind. Both of
And
them was like boom, and then later boom again.
and something I did not expect. I was told about it, but when Far From Home was announced, and you come out of Endgame and don't go see Far From Home before seeing Endgame,
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
because it's actually it's the real last movie of Phase 4 is Far From Home, and there's a lot of things very, very quickly, in a very snappy way
Like
and
very
efficient and
quickly.
hilarious way. It explains to you how people dealt with the events of Endgame, and it's amazing. It's
Yep.
mind blowing. It's great.
So the other thing I was going to talk about, which we chatted just a little bit before we went on air, I ran Monster of the Week last night, and that was the first time I've ever ran a Powered by the Apocalypse game. As I've only played like 2 or 3 times, so I'm very new to that system style of game. But I love Buffy. I love Supernatural. I love the first 6 seasons of X Files. Last 2, not so much. So that's the type of game that's 100% in my wheelhouse. Also love Scooby Doo. So I made a quick mystery, and as I was telling you, I did kind of a weird gender bent Scooby Doo gang. So Fred and Shaggy became girls, and Velma and Daphne became guys, and they had a teacup dog instead of a Great Dane. And they were actually trying to set up an actual haunted house, like not a a haunted house attraction, not an actual ghost haunted house, but like there's a thing in there. But they were faking like it was really haunted just to get uh, like people to come and get some interest in it. But then it turned out turned out to be an actual ghost there. So it was pretty fun. The guys that played it with me, Brad and Ryan, both seemed to like it. I think the biggest thing is, like I said, the timing. I didn't have enough time to really let the mystery kind of play out like satisfyingly. The turn from what's going on to, oh my god, we're being attacked by a monster, was really, really fast. And I don't know that I handled the combat great, because again, I'd never really done it before. But
Combat's tricky in Monster of the Week.
yeah,
I have found. I listened to a ton of shows before we went live, so I like got the handle on it a little bit better.
hmm
But, it's really hard to just like jump in there because it's so different from most like RPGs.
yeah. So definitely something I want to try again. Maybe play it a couple times and then try it again. But I mean, I love mystery type games, so it's a game that I should want to run. Though I will say, I'm on record. D6s are dumb. D6s are the worst dice. So
Oh,
so I made them roll 2d12s, and we did our ranges 1 to 12, 13 to 20, and then 21 plus. So it wasn't exactly the same math, but it's close enough.
D6 are
why
great.
bother?
I started with D6, loads of D6, Star Wars D6. You got bucket loads of D6s,
Yeah,
Star Wars,
D6s are
Shadowrun,
dumb.
all those are great.
The only D4s are the only
20s,
dumber dice. The D6s.
D20 is overrated. It keeps rolling. It's a
D12
bad
is the
die.
perfect die.
D4s are terrible because if you step on them, they'll like go through your foot.
Yeah, those are bad. Awesome.
I like D6s because I don't have to do a lot of math, and I'm really bad at math. For the last arc of the of Thornvale, there was a time clock, and I kept telling them, "Okay, so you have you have this amount of time left." And every single time I said, "Okay, you have this amount of time left," my husband, who's an engineer, chimed in and said, "No, actually, we have this amount of time left." And then I thought about it, and I was like, "Yep, he's right." Every single time, awful at math. I'm never doing something that requires a time clock ever again.
So New York Tater jumped in about the dice for a catacon this year go to 7 because D6s are dumb. So we have a D7 at a catacon this year. Alrighty. So with that, we're going to move into everyone's favorite part of the show is when we do improv badly. The first game we play is called 10 Things, and this is a game where we will prompt one another to try to come up with a list of 10 things. And the idea is to do it as quickly as possible, so immediacy is more important than accuracy. Susannah, you are the guest, so you can choose. Would you like to give someone a prompt first, or would you like to receive a prompt first?
I want to get it out of the way, so give me one.
Oh, okay. 10 villain. Yeah, you're a Spider-Man fan. 10 villains you would like to see in Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man villains?
Yeah, so like the next movie, who do you want to be the villain? We've already had Vulture, then we had Mysterio. Who's the main villain in Spider-Man 3?
Let's see if I can name 10 Spider-Man villains. Kingpin.
1.
Craven for sure. Definitely want to see that as the next one. Green Goblin.
3.
Hobgoblin.
4.
I don't. I'm such a Spider-Man nerd. I should be better at this. Black Cat.
5.
Oh no. I'm gonna switch to Batman villains. Joker.
6.
Penguin.
7. The crossover we've all been asking for.
Catwoman.
8.
Why am I so bad at this? Hush.
9.
Lex Luthor.
10. Yay!
I've said one of those twice.
Those were 10 things. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right.
Oh boy, that was rough.
So you will give Kalum a prompt, and then he will complete the circle with me. So give Kalum something for 10 things.
Okay, Caleb. Top 10 RPGers you'd like to have on your show.
Ooh. So the games themselves.
No. Like people who
People.
do RPGs.
Oh, people who do RPGs. Oh, okay.
Podcast.
Okay. Fabrice Lamide, Frederick Weil,
What?
who are French designers.
2? I think that's 2.
Okay.
Croc, yeah, Fabrice and Frederic.
Okay.
Croc, French designer too. Matthew Mercer.
4.
Of course.
John Wick,
5.
John Harper,
6.
Grant Howitt,
7.
Sam Webb.
8.
Go check the Kickstarter for D20 Spy. Come on. Gina Key Moran
9.
and myself. If
10.
that would mean one there, one.
I lost count.
You just want someone else to edit. That's all you want. All right. Excellent. Thank you, sir. And then lay it on me. What are my 10 things?
Oh, sorry. Your 10. Your 10 podcasts who never been part of the network, but you would like them to be part of a new network.
Okay. Batman Beyond. I'll also name all the Kevin Smith podcasts I listen to. Edumacation. Oh, what's the other one he does? I can't believe I'm failing here.
You're 2 in.
I know! He does like 9 podcasts, and I can't think of any of them right now. Dirty John.
You just want to acquire him.
Well, it's a podcast. Son of a gun. How did this get made?
Nice.
Storm of Spoilers.
5.
Everything else Joanna does. So Little Gold Men, Fighting in the War Room. Though that's Dave Gonzalez.
7.
Young Justice Files, the one that Rich does.
8.
Oh gosh. I'm gonna pull up my phone and go through all my podcasts I've been listening to.
That's cheered.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Atlanta Monster and Up and Vanished.
There you go.
Yay! Those were 10 things terribly. All right. So
There
we're
you
going to move into what's generally the meat and potatoes of the show. This is usually what we spend the most time talking about, but it doesn't have to be. And this is what we call used books. And the idea here is we're going to talk about a campaign that one of us has either played or ran. And there's something about that campaign that we think is interesting enough to talk about. We're going to deep dive and see if we can pull out a few nuggets of wisdom, things that we might want to try to do again, or maybe things we want to try to avoid in future games. So, Susannah, you are our guest tonight. Do you have something you can talk about for used books?
Do I? So this is not a campaign, but it was an arc in part of the campaign. So I play a D&D game, or at least I have, but my friend that I'm going to the graduation of has been missing for a couple of months, so I haven't been able to play the specific game. Technically, it's Pathfinder.
Gotcha.
So I play a Pathfinder badly. I've learned so much about Pathfinder just listening to the Glass Cannon podcast. But before that, I just played a pretty loose game. So basically what we did is we have let's see if I can remember. We have I think he's a half-elf bard, a dwarven fighter, a human dragonborn mix sorcerer, and a human archer, and that's our 4 people. And at the time, we also had a magus, I don't know how you pronounce that, and I gave the party a healer, which is irrelevant for this particular story, but I just thought they were all going to die, so I gave them a healer, and her name is Annie. Anyways, so they were in a town doing some stuff, and the bard, whose name was Leholin, suddenly got a message from a courier. Yeah, that's the word. From a courier who told him that his uncle had died, and because they couldn't find his father, that he was the one that was going to inherit the mansion. And I mean, a mansion, like huge with ranches in the backyard. And the only thing that was mentioned in the thing was that you had to stay in it for 5 days, and then it would be yours. So they traveled to do this, having a couple of mishaps along the way, and they got to the mansion, and they were greeted by a ghost who was the what's the word? The property manager.
Groundskeeper.
His name was Joseph Laughingsteel. And yeah, groundskeeper, that's the word. And he told them that, okay, yeah, you guys have to stay in the mansion the entire time. Things may happen, but if you need to leave, you can. But if Leholin leaves, you don't get the mansion. The rest of you can leave, but if Leholin leaves, you can't get the mansion. So they went all the way through. They met all the staff. They seem really nice. And the first night, all the staff leaves. Everyone's gone. The only people are those 5 at the time, because the magus wasn't there. They actually found the magus in the cellar. He was like locked in a dungeon. Because they found out that the guy who owned the building before, Leholin's uncle, had a thing for dire animals, and he had been pretending to be a dire animal, and he got captured. So they found a random naked guy, and it was great.
Yeah.
Anyways, so first night they get attacked by a couple things. Each night had a different theme, and it's been so long I can't remember what the theme. I know one of the nights was a clockwork theme. One of the nights was like all dire animals, I think. One of the nights was all like acidic things. So each night had like a different theme. One of the nights, the actual house itself was out to get them, and it got like colder and colder and colder until like they were all like starting to take damage from the cold. So
would you say that you had a monster of the night?
Sure. But anyway, so they get through the first night. They take some damage, and they're not feeling very good. But the clock strikes 12 or whatever. I can't remember what. I think it was like 6 in the morning or something. And all the monsters go away, and they're fine. And then in the morning, they ask their healer to heal them up, and she tries, but nothing happens. Nothing happens, and then Joseph Laughingsteel, the ghost that runs the place, comes up and says, "Oh yeah, so I wasn't allowed to tell you this because your uncle told me not to, but you have to stay here for 5 nights, and every single night you're going to get attacked, and you cannot heal the entire time." You should have seen my player's face. It was hilarious.
Nice.
They were so mad. It was great. Okay, so they went through, and I think on like the 3rd night, both the healer, who was pretty useless, and the sorcerer, who was my dad, got knocked so far down, and they had to like yeet them out the front door so that they could heal and live. And then the next night, another person went down. They had 6, I think, so another person went down, and then the last night it was down to 2 different people, and they were in this arboretum greenhouse area, and the final they finish everything and they think, okay, we're done. There's 2 people left. It's the Magus and Leholin, the bard, who is the one that is supposed to own the place. They're the only 2 left. Everyone else is outside. I think one of them got like terrified into running through the glass wall.
Okay.
It was awesome. And Joseph Laughingsteel, the ghost, comes in before the clock strikes whatever time and starts clapping and says, good job, you guys did amazing, except one more thing. And he starts attacking them. And Joseph Laughingsteel was the final boss. And it was so cool because I could never have predicted this. Like, they were on like 3 hit points each. Like, they had nothing left. And we're gonna talk about the ghost in your other part of the podcast, but like, he's brutal. And I was just like, oh, he's gonna demolish him. You're not gonna get the house. And I was really worried that they weren't gonna be able to like do it. And then I had remembered that the Magus had done something earlier where he found the head of the household. He found like a picture of the head of the household and like learned his face. And I was like, why are you doing that? And then during this fight with Joseph, he was a shapeshifter. He turned his face into this guy and convinced the ghost that he was his master just long enough for one of the other players to throw a cold iron something or other, like a cold iron chain through the glass wall from the outside and pull Joseph out so that he couldn't attack them because no one could go back inside. And it was so glorious. And I was just like, I never, ever could have thought that was going to happen. Like, I never would have imagined that he would have like persuaded his way out of doing it. And not only like, it wasn't even the bard doing the persuasion, it was the Magus. And I was just, oh man, it was so amazing. It was just like, it's the most fun I've ever had like playing, except when I did the cliffhanger in the last episode of Thornvale.
Okay. So I guess my first question would be, is what were you planning to happen? So you're talking about how you had no idea that what ended up happening would happen. So when you created this encounter, you're like, hey, this will be fun. Like, what did you think was going to happen? What was your plan?
My plan, when I created the whole thing, I kind of designed it so that I would pick different monsters every night, and I would kind of tailor it to how they were doing. Because I wanted it to be difficult, but not like impossible, because I wanted them to get the house. Like, I thought that'd be really cool if they had this like base of operations where it's close by to this other place that they needed to go for the main like storyline. And so what I wanted them to do was defeat everything, but I mean, I had to hold to what I already had planned. And what I already had planned was that Joseph was going to be the one who was the lead, who was the final villain. And he was just doing his job, like basically, like they actually let him stay on as like the caretaker. That's what he's called. He's the caretaker.
Gotcha.
Because he was just bound to do this because he's like bound to the house. And what I never thought that 2 of them would be down so quickly, but I was getting a little nervous when the 3rd night came around and there were 2 of them already outside. I was like, oh, that's a problem. I don't know.
So
this might be harder than I thought it was going to be.
So did this whole week in the game occur in one session, or was this something that happened over multiple sessions?
In a couple. It was like in, I think, 2 or 3.
Okay.
Of a couple of hours. Yeah.
So,
it was time.
So
Each fight took a long time. So
yeah, that makes sense. Especially if you're playing Pathfinder. So
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I'm thinking of is just obviously this was something that was important to them because otherwise they would just been like peace out and then left. So did you know that the mansion would have been enough of an item or loot or whatever that they would want to? Were you as surprised maybe that they did stick it out? They didn't just walk away when things started to go bad?
No. They needed cash like real bad.
Okay.
And the mansion like gave them a massive bit of disposable income to use afterwards.
All right.
So like I knew they were going to try to stick it out as much as they could. I didn't know how well they were going to do.
Gotcha. All right. So what would you have done if they had failed? If the rolls had gone the wrong way, or if they just like, yeah, all right, this is too much and left, would that have just been gone, or did you have any sort of like contingency plans?
I really didn't know. I thought they'd be able to do it, and they did, barely. But like I was just gonna let them not get the place. Like if it happened, like they had to do this. That was like the way the house worked. I was just gonna say like, yeah, sorry guys. I know you've been doing this for 3 sessions, but no, you failed. This is you get to live. You know, you can live.
Consolation prize, yeah.
And they had already made friends with a bunch of the NPCs in town over time. And so they probably would have like stayed there for a good amount of time. But no, I would have just, they don't get it.
Nice.
There's no prize, you lose.
So what I thought you were going to do when you were telling the story, what I thought was going to happen is that the ghost had set the clock forward an hour and they were going to walk out and it was actually 5 o'clock and not 6 o'clock and they lost at the very end.
That was so mean.
I know. I was like, oh, that would be so awesome,
cool.
but awful. All right. So Kalum, do you have any questions for Susannah? Anything about that you would want to maybe dig into a little bit?
So you said you were considering it. I don't know if you did it in the end. I really like the idea of that because you manage through luck and opportunity to make it just like you wanted. You wanted them to be at at the edge at the very end to succeed, but, barely, which is what we're trying to do so often. So you said you were considering that you would adapt the monsters some nights based on how they were doing. So I guess to keep them from dying slightly too fast or too slow. Did you do that in the end? Did you make any amendments to lower the power of the monsters, except the very final one?
No, I really didn't. Usually the way I did it was in the number and like like challenge rating of the monsters. So I would say like, okay, so they had a hard time with this. In each of the monsters had like their own special thing. Like that was a problem with them. Like one of them, like I don't remember if the Cold Knight even had a monster. I think it did, but it's been so long I can't even remember if the Cold Knight, like, it was just like literally the house. No, it did. I think that was a clockwork one. I can't remember. One of the knights was like all clockwork creatures. But I didn't change the monsters at all, but I changed the number of monsters if I thought they needed a little less or a little more, but I never changed the monsters because honestly, that's way too much math. Man, I don't, no, thank you.
So that's one of the things I know I've talked about this before, but just in general, one of my philosophies when it comes to building encounters, because I usually just make mine up on the fly. I don't do a whole lot of pre-planning, is I set up encounters that can happen in waves very easily. So I think there's going to be 3 ogres, but if it seems like, they're going into this encounter underpowered, somebody didn't show up, so they already wasted their spells, I may only have 1 ogre show up. And then if they end up wiping that one out because somebody rolls a natural 20 on the first attack, then another one just shows up. Like I can either bring them in or not based on how I think it's going, because I want the encounter, to Caleb's point, to be difficult. I want it to be challenging. But at the same time, I expect the players to win every time. Unless they just make really bad decisions or the dice are poor, they're going to win. But I want it to be fun and challenging. So that's one thing I just encourage people to do is when you're designing encounters, build in waves of creatures or changes like the environment. Again, maybe on round 3, a fissure opens up and lava comes out, and that changes the battlefield. And
that's a good idea.
And you can play with it. Like if things are going really poorly, maybe the lava cuts off some of the goblins so they now can't attack the person they were going to attack. So you're not saving them, but you're just creating like a temporary respite for that character, give them a chance to get a healing spell or something in. Which I'm also pro fudging. Like I'll fudge dice all day long. I know not everyone does. It's totally cool if you don't, but I do. But when you sit down to design an encounter, the goal is to make it fun. But you have very limited information. Like all you know is what you think the players might do, what you think might be fun for them, who you think's going to show up. But when the game is actually starting, you now have more information. You know who actually did show up. You know who is using their spells correctly. You know how the rolls are going. So to say that you can't make changes to what you decided before the game starts once the game is going, I just think is silly. Whether, again, that doesn't mean you're fudging dice, but just changing the number of creatures when they come in. I'll change hit points. Like if there's only 2 hit points left when you hit the ogre, there's a good chance the ogre's going to die. If you say a really cool thing and you hit it with a natural 20, I'm not going to be like, oh, there's 2 hit points left, and the next person gets to kill it. Like I'm all about doing that kind of stuff.
I'm very much rule of cool, and I think it was also helpful to have a night that was a little less dangerous in terms of, well, it was incredibly dangerous because the cold night was really, it was a lot of fun for me to run, because basically like the way I designed it was that the cold started going from the top of the house to the bottom of the house. And of course, the players decided to stay in the observatory, which was the top part of the house. And so they immediately started getting the cold. So that kind of put them off to a disadvantage in the first place. And then they had monsters they were trying to run from. And the way they ended up fixing it was they ended up in the in that greenhouse I told you about, because it was like the warmest part of the house. And it started, the cold was like creeping closer and closer. And one of them, I don't remember why, was somehow immune to cold. Something, I don't know if he had a spell or what happened, but someone was immune to cold, and they had a bag of holding. And so they're like, hey, can we just stuff everyone else in this bag of holding and then get down into the basement and then lock the basement and then just keep fires burning on either side of us? And I'm like, yeah, you can do that.
Sure, yeah. Nice.
I don't know if that's how bags of holding work.
They do now.
I don't care, because it was such a cool idea just to stuff all their friends in this bag of holding and get them into the basement. It was fantastic.
So when you had the players that were injured and had to leave the house, were they able to come back in so they could continue to play as players, or did their characters have to stay outside?
They could come back in during the day and do all the interactions during the day with the household staff. They could get to know people, get to know Joseph. Like, they loved Joseph. Like, at the end, they loved they ended up like, they were so betrayed when he ended up being the final villain. And then they were just like so happy when it was like, look, I had to do this. Please don't make me leave. And so it was fun because they could come back in for like all the role play stuff during the day. And then as soon as all the servants left, they had to leave. But like I said, in the final one, they were in this glassed in greenhouse. And they're like, hey, if we like blast a hole in the window, can we do stuff? Because the idea was like, if you came in and you weren't allowed to come back in, that you would just like incinerate instantly. Which was why when they got you could leave, but you couldn't come back. Which is why when they got Joseph out, that meant it was game over.
Gotcha.
So they were like, hey, if we blast holes in this glass area, can we send down these chains and like pull monsters out? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And at one point, my dad was like, hey, do I find any cold iron? And I'm like, if you roll for it, you can. And he rolled like a 30 something. And I'm like, yes, the blacksmith somehow has cold iron chains. I don't know why, but you rolled really well, and I'm going to give it to you.
I like the idea that the bard is like mad at them for messing up his house, though. Like when they're putting holes and stuff, he's like, no, that's my greenhouse.
Yeah, there was a point at which during the day, I would say, you see the servants going around and fixing things, using magic to like fix all the stuff you broke during the night.
Nice. So if you were to do something similar, whether it's the exact same encounter for a different party or just something similar in the future, is there anything that you would do differently based on having done it before and been through it once? Is there anything that like, okay, this is a tweak I would want to implement?
Oh boy. I really don't think I would do anything differently. I think the only thing differently would be I would have to use, depending on like the level of the people, I would have to use like different monsters. It just so happened to be, because in Pathfinder, Joseph is a challenge rating 7, and the players were all level 6, level 6, I think, and so he was like the perfect boss for them at the time. And I'm bad at math, so remember that.
Yeah.
So I would have to use different things, and I would have to tweak the ghost, because I would have to use the ghost.
Mhm.
I would either have to have him change into something else, any other kind of ghosty goo form. But I think it would mostly be like different monsters, depending on, different things. And
Gotcha.
obviously, like, I could change the theme. I think that would be like if I wanted to run the same thing again, but with people who knew the story basically. So if I had someone come in and they said, "Hey, I want to run the murder house," I would say, "Okay, you're going to run the murder house," and they would know basically the rules, but each of the monsters would be different, and the theme night would be different.
Mhm.
Each night would have a different idea, theme, that kind of thing. Like, I had a bat night. All the monsters were bats, and that was a blast.
Yep.
So I would just like theme it differently, I think, if I was running it with different people.
I like the idea too. Just it's sort of turning the idea of like a dungeon crawl on its head, where instead of going further or deeper into the dungeon, you're static and the dungeon comes to you. I just think that's kind of an interesting take on that. So, any other questions, Calum, before we get ready to move on?
No, I think we can move on. I find it's a really cool idea. I like the idea of the players earning something, so they value it much more. And I love the idea of the reverse dungeon crawl, and then they will have this base of operation, but it's linked to this adventure they had within the space, and it's also an introduction for all the NPCs who revolve around this place. So I think it's really brilliant. I love it.
Very cool.
So before I go on, I should mention I didn't outright steal it, but I got the idea of having a place where no one can heal from the Adventure Zone arc, the Suffering game.
Okay.
I thought mine was nicer, but my husband said it was like much harder. I can't remember if they were allowed to heal in that or not, but I got the idea of just like this place where they kept getting punished over and over again and losing things. And I was like, what if they lost the ability to heal the whole time? But that was kind of like the initial idea of where it came from, and then it just evolved from there.
Back in my olden days as a wee lad, I had I always played in homebrew worlds, and I had a world that was like post-apocalyptic. So it's like future tech, but it's all destroyed and in just bits and pieces. People don't know how to use it. Very gunslinger, Dark Tower-ish sort of thing. And I had certain places in this world where magic wouldn't work, like Magic Dead Zones. Same thing. There were certain places where healing magic wouldn't work. But not only if you were in there could you not heal, if you were injured while you were in there, that wound would never heal.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So like you take 8 points of damage, you would have a scar. You could never ever heal it, even if you left that area, because I was a terrible DM and made terrible decisions.
That's so rough.
So Shortman Ian mentioned cold iron in folklore is usually used against fae. I know in the show Supernatural it also affects ghosts. Rock salt and cold iron also can affect ghosts because they always use their fireplace pokers to swing at like baseball bats.
See, here's the thing. I didn't know anything about the cold iron thing, but a bunch of my players said, "Hey, this thing affects ghosts," and I looked at my husband, who at that point, like, I had been only GMing for like a couple of weeks, and I turned to my husband and I was like, "Is this true, or are they screwing with me?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, it's true." I was like, "Okay." So if it doesn't affect ghosts, I blame my players because I didn't know anything about it.
Well, again, if everyone had fun, then you made exactly the right call. All right. So we're going to move in.
It was ridiculous that they got it in the first place.
Well, true.
Wouldn't have been cold iron just laying around.
Yeah, but again, it was for a great moment. Well, that's like when you watch a movie and while you're in the movie you love it, but on the drive home you start thinking about how stupid certain coincidences were. As long as you enjoyed it at the time, that's all that matters.
As long as it doesn't work and then don't work anymore, as long as it not contradict itself within the story, I don't find there's any issue with that. Even in a movie, if it's the ring rights cannot cross water. Okay, as long as they don't cross water later, it's fine. I mean, dragons against a fleet of boats, you're gonna lose dragons, but suddenly you got a single dragon and it can kill everybody very easily. That's more of a problem.
Yeah. for a completely made up example that has no basis in any sort of reality.
Absolutely.
Exactly. All right, so let's move into everyone's actual favorite part of the game or show, which is my least favorite because I hate it, and that's where my fingers have been. This is our other improv.
I got a question before we start. Like, this is your podcast. Like, you can just pick a different game.
People would revolt. Like, we don't have a huge audience, but those who watch it, this is what they come for: is me doing improv terribly, and I cannot deny them that.
Okay.
So the game Where Have My Fingers Been? Again, it's an improv game where we will give each other prompts, and we will create little scenes with our little finger people talking to each other based off of what the prompt is. The idea is to try and have a beginning, middle, and end. I often don't do that because I'm terrible at the game. And if you want to be really creative, you can even bring in like third people and turn it into like a whole big thing. So New York Tater and Shortman Ian are both saying no, we cannot choose a different game.
Yeah.
All right. So Susannah, you are the guest. Would you like to go first, or would you like to give someone else a prompt first?
You know what? I'm gonna give it to you.
Okay. Almost set the bar really low for both of you.
Yeah.
Great,
Okay.
perfect.
That's you've guessed my secret plan. Okay, your fingers are in the murder house.
All right. So, and I also forgot we have to do the song too. So, where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been? So, murder house. So, yeah, seems kind of strange. This ghost caretaker just kind of hanging around. Yeah, I know. Like, don't you think that like it would be really weird if like they turned out to be the main boss and like we had to kill them at the end? Yeah, that'd be really weird. Hey, is it cold in here? Nah. Maybe we should go get some cold iron. I think that only works against fake creatures. No, I'm pretty sure I watched Supernatural. And it actually works against ghosts too. I read that somewhere. Oh, all right. That makes sense. Want to get some Taco Bell after? Sure. And that's where my fingers have been.
I love that Supernatural and Taco Bell exist in my platform.
Absolutely. All right. So I will give Kalum a prompt, and then Kalum will close the circle by giving Susannah a prompt at the end.
Okay.
So, Kalum, your fingers. First of all, sing the song. Go ahead. You gotta sing the song.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Where have my finger been? Where have my finger been?
Your fingers are in line to see Spider-Man Far From Home when someone spoils the ending for you.
Cool.
Okay. Well, listen, man, I've been avoiding everything. I haven't watched any trailer, anything. I avoided the website talking about the store and everything. Hey, did you know that Jameson is back for Spider-Man Far From Home? Are you fucking kidding me? I've been avoiding everything. You
Yeah, PG-13, you get one of those.
They build up expectations. It was very visual. Sorry for the people.
Why Tater says you can curse in French.
Yes.
I think that's what he means anyways. Hang on. Can we talk for a second? Are you done with your fingers?
Yes, and that
Okay.
was my finger been.
Okay. Can we talk about how freaking awesome it was to see J.K. Simmons again?
That was...
Dude, that blew my mind.
Yeah, I was so excited. I yelled in the cinema.
I think I did I just put my arms out and was like, God bless J.K. Simmons.
I love this actor. Did you watch Oz back in the days?
I don't think so.
No.
It was before TV at its golden age, before The Soprano and everything. There's a show called Oz, and it's placed in the experimental prison, and it was on HBO. And that's the first time I ever saw J.K. Simmons, and he played a Nazi. So you had different groups of prisoners. And one of them were the white supremacists, and he was the neo-Nazi leader of them, and he was amazing. And it was amazing
Cool.
to see him after that in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where he played a very different cartoonish character.
Yeah.
I just love this actor. I so look forward. I hope we have more of him.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you played Jameson in the newest Sony Spider-Man game.
Was
Because I remember listening to the voice and going, "Is that J.K. Simmons?" because he's like he like plays on the radio all the time. I'm like, oh yes.
Nice.
So surprising.
He's such a jerk the whole time, and I'm like, man, why do I love this guy so much? He's such a douche.
Awesome. In the original movie, at some point, he is questioned by Dr. Octavius, and he doesn't give away the name of Peter Parker.
That was his one shining moment.
It's one shot.
Awesome. All right, so give Susannah a prompt for where her fingers have been.
Well, I think we're gonna stay in Far From Home. So Susannah, your fingers have been in the third post-credit scene of Far From Home.
Oh, that's spoilers.
The third one, so the non-existent one.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay, give me a second. All right, let's see.
And you got to do the song too when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of something. Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been? I think I'm Spider-Man's number one fan. No, Ned, I'm clearly Spider-Man's number one fan. I kissed him. Like, clearly I'm Spider-Man. But I've been Spider-Man's number one fan longer. You just got here. And he's like, yeah, okay. Well, when you kiss him, you can say you're his number one fan. That's where my fingers have been.
And that's where your fingers have been. Yay!
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for playing our silly little reindeer games. All right, so we will move into the
less stressful than the other one. And I thought the other one was going to be more stressful.
Yeah, that one's usually the one that gets most people. So we go into the last section of the show. This is what we call Cryptozoology, and this is where we're going to talk about a monster. Generally, it has to do with D&D, but does not always have to be. And talk about ways we've used this creature in the past. Maybe brainstorm some ways to use it in the future. So again, Susannah, you're the guest. Do you have a monster you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so I want to talk about Mr. Joseph Laughingsteel himself, my ghost, that I used as the final boss in the Murder House arc.
Awesome. All right, so tell us about the ghost and what they can do in the version you used, and then maybe why did you choose that creature? Like the thought process behind it.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you some of his stats. He's got +5 to his initiative. He's got an AC of 17, which isn't terrible. These are level 6 characters. He's not terrible. His health is only 73. I threw much meaner things at them. He can fly, which is interesting, but the problem is he's also incorporeal. He can rejuvenate. He's undead, which means he's immune to a whole bunch of stuff. And he has a melee attack that is 7d6 damage. It's only +6, which isn't too bad, but the DC save is 18, which is kind of rough. And I'm looking it up to see what frightful moan means. I can't remember anymore.
I think when I read that, it was like it caused them to flee, like a fright effect.
That's what it was. I couldn't remember why someone just bolted at the end of the thing, but I think the last person that was in there before what went down was one of the characters, and just bolted out the glass of the place. So yeah, he's got a lot of stuff that's pretty rough, but yeah, it's if you can hit him, he's not hard to take down. But the problem is, I knew these people wouldn't be able to hit him. So
that's so mean.
Yeah, so other than the cold iron that they use, generally you have to have force or magical weapons to affect a ghost, right?
Yeah. And we had the Magus, but boy, was he out of spells. He was out of spells. The only one left was the Bard, and he was out of spells, and it was just a rough night. They got their spells back, I should mention. They got all their spells back at the end of the night, just not healing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I just loved it, and it had to be a ghost because Joseph was a ghost, and I really wanted Joseph to be the surprise villain at the end because they were fighting plant things, and they were in the I keep forgetting the greenhouse, this arboretum greenhouse part, this glassed in area, and they were like, this is where we're gonna have our last place, and okay, whatever, you're gonna fight plant things. So they had just finished fighting these really nasty living topiaries, And they had him down and like, okay, we're fine, we survived, we got it. Like, there's no way she's gonna throw more crap at us. And Joseph comes in, just, you guys did so good. Unfortunately,
Now you gotta die.
now you're gonna die.
Nice. So, Calum, have you ever used ghosts in other games, D&D specifically, but any other encounters that you've used ghosts for?
No, I don't remember using Ghost. It's funny. I was thinking of what I would tell about if I was doing the use book and it was a campaign which sort of ended in the Shadowfell. But no, no Ghost. Just want to say I really like the idea that the ghost has been there for a while and people didn't know it was a ghost. So if I was playing with ghosts, I like the idea of sticking around in a place and you run into them and you have just conversations and NPCs, and as long as nobody touches them, there might be something weird and creepy. It's really like the hunting of Hill House.
Mm.
And my favorite character, I think the real hero of the hunting on Hill House, the most terrifying creature, is the clock repairman.
Mm.
Apparently he's a ghost, but it doesn't do anything. And apparently his big feat is that nobody noticed that he was hanging out there and doing his thing. And it's so banal that nobody thought, oh, it's a ghost. But I really like the idea of taking your house and there are repairs going on and the players interact with workers or whatever, and there are maybe clues and foreshadowing of different things that some of them are ghosts, but they only find out much later. And I don't know, I like this kind of surprises and twists.
So spoilers for Sixth Sense, but Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. So Shortman Ian also mentioned that ghosts have the ability that they can cause the PCs to age. I think like you can go through them and cause them to basically age.
That's cool.
Cool.
Like again, you can basically cause
Pardon me.
people to die from natural causes by hanging out with them. I've used ghosts a few times. Actually, the Monster of the Week game I ran last night, the main bad guy was a ghost. I fully use supernatural rules. So if you salt and burn the body, it will cause the ghost to go away, regardless of whatever D&D type ways you have to solve it. But one of the ways I can remember fairly recently, well, not fairly recently, but fairly vividly, is I used an encounter where there was a ghost that was trapped in an underground. It wasn't like a dungeon, but essentially for D&D purposes, it was a dungeon because it was an enclosed space underground. It's like a temple that had been swallowed and covered by dirt. And they weren't able to leave unless they hitched a ride with a person. So the encounter was trying to convince one of the PCs to let the ghost inhabit their body in order for the ghost to get a ride out. And in exchange, the ghost was going to tell them things like, I'll tell you which doors you can go through, where the traps are, where the monsters are, in exchange for getting a ride out. So there was a role play scene to try to figure that out. And then the ghost didn't want to leave the body when they actually did get out. So then there was a fight for control. And then the other players had to like beat up their friend to make them almost die, to make the ghost expelled, but not actually kill their friend. So that's probably the most, like the top of mind use I've had for a ghost.
I remember a ghost now I used. The reason I did not remember is because the context was very different. I use Red Jack from Star Trek. So I run a Starfleet Academy campaign. So for the people not familiar with the original series, Red Jack is an alien entity, ghostish, but that entity was Jack the Ripper. So that's the idea. And
That's cool.
my idea was that it was, because it was Starfleet Academy, I didn't want it to make it too violent. So it was a remnant of it, but it fed on negative ideas, feelings. So it would start by just possessing people into making pranks. On the Starfleet Academy campus was quite appropriate. It was a sort of it was just before a sort of a homecoming thing, Sadie Hawkins dance. And so, but the pranks would become meaner and meaner and start to become creepy as he became powerful, and he would leave clues. And the big reveal with the player was quite cool when they found a letter, and I took back the signature from a historic, whether or not Jack the Ripper existed is up to debate, but we do have those letters. So he had the same signature and then ran it into the computer and said, oh, this is identified as belonging to Jack the Ripper. So the players were already like, whoa, that's it. And the computer started listing list of victims, London this year, Shanghai this year, and then this planet this year. And my player was not familiar with Star Trek, the original series, so they were like completely mind blown. What is going on? Jack the Ripper went to space. And yeah, the final scene was quite cool. With the whole point was to find out he could not possess different people. So yeah, the player had to find out who was the possessed person among them. So it ended up they were in these, I don't know what you call that in English, but housing, frat house, mixed frat house. And they had to work out, the frat house was locked, quarantine, and they had to work out who among the NPCs had Jack the Ripper within them. And it was all about, yeah, faking out Jack the Ripper, faking out being stabbed, so he would be taken away. Teleportation in the hospital, but I put the pressure so that the players were very panicked. Say, okay, this is serious. This is a very serious wound. She needs to go to medbay, and we're okay. Okay, we're gonna have her teleported, and just before they teleported her, no, actually, no, they did teleport her, and then they realized, and then they call medbay, and I said, you just hear a few screams, and
oh no! Oh, nice.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Very, very cool. I love tying in somewhat realistic and then the lore of Star Trek. If you know it, it's like a bonus. But if you don't, it's still a cool encounter and it still is interesting. I do like the idea of having a ghost as more like an NPC, similar to how Susannah used the caretaker, but maybe like the Thieves Guild. Like maybe the master thief is a ghost. They can't leave their lair, but they still they still control people and send out people and bring people stuff. And that could be just kind of a cool NPC. Like they've been around for a very long time. What do they know? How do they know it? And then obviously they're a ghost if anyone does try to fight them. Kind of hard to do. You think of any other like non-traditional hit it with a sword ways that we can use a ghost? We already had some, but any others coming to mind?
So I was just thinking when you were talking about like useful NPCs, not an NPC, but have you guys listened to the Adventure Zone Dust?
Nope.
One of the characters in there was a ghost, and he had these like really cool like different abilities that he could do. Like he could be seen, heard, or felt, or something like that. I can't remember. It's been such a long time since I've seen it, but he could only do two at once. So he could be like seen and felt, or heard and seen, and that kind of thing. But it was really fun way to like, you could actually like make your character if you wanted to. Like you could make your whole character a ghost. I was thinking about it because I was thinking about like, it's not a ghost, but like I'm listening to the Quest Company right now, and they have a skeleton in their group, and I was like, oh, that's not quite a ghost. And then I thought about this one, like, yeah, so like you could actually like use a ghost as your own character, and that would be super cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Completely unrelated, but it made me think of this. I saw a cartoon, like a strip cartoon, an animated cartoon, of two skeletons, and they look over and they see like an adventurer in a dungeon. And they look at each other and they run over and they kill the guy and they rip his skeleton out. And the skeleton's like, "Thanks, guys, I was trapped."
That's good. I like that.
Awesome. All right. So for anyone, again, listening now or in the future, if you've ever used a ghost in a way that you think is interesting, please let us know. Hit us up in the comments of this episode. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, and let us know about it. We're going to wrap things up, but we like to do a few moments of question and answer. So there's a bit of a delay, so while we're waiting for anyone in the audience who might want to ask any questions, and again, it can be related to D&D or not. It can be for any of us, but ideally for all of us. Susannah, one more time, who are you? Where can people find your work on the internet? Where can they go listen to your show?
Yeah, so I'm Susannah. I'm the keeper of the Thornvale podcast. It's a actual play Monster of the Week set in a small island town in off the coast of Florida, where three monster people or three monster hunters try to protect this small town. And get their butts kicked doing it.
Excellent. And again, so where can they find that show? Is it Spotify,
Yeah, so you can find it
iTunes?
pretty much anywhere. If you search Thornvale, it's Thornvale. Yeah, Thornvale.
Excellent. And it's fairly new shows. There's not that many episodes. Pretty easy to binge and
Our
catch
12th
up.
episode is coming out on Friday.
Friday, the 5th, I hear.
No. No.
Awesome.
Actually, it's the 12th, which is great because it's our 12th episode. But yeah, I'm not good at math, guys.
All right, Kalum, again, for anybody who wants to find your stuff, where can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm available on iTunes, on Podchaser, any podcasting platform. You will find the Rollist podcast. So the Rollist, so it's D, like in English, the English article, and Rollist, which means role player in French, is ROLISTES. And yeah, podcast, and yeah, you can find us there. Please come see me. I started the Rollist vlogcast recently, which is not as well produced. I post it on YouTube, but actually I created on TikTok. So I started doing TikToks recently, which is interesting. And I blame Senda from She's a Super Geek. That's her fault if I'm doing TikTok stuff. Speaking of Senda, I would be super thankful to anyone listening to this and going right away to vote for She's a Super Geek for the Annie Awards, because I think it's overdue. They get a gold Annie for this amazing show about one shots and ladies as game masters.
Can you post the link in the chat so we can see it?
Yep.
Sweet.
I think they're disabled though, so it probably won't actually be an actual link. But if you just take the dot out, then people can get there themselves.
Yeah.
So as for myself, obviously the RPG Academy. Everywhere you search, if you find anything, it's probably me. If you search RPG Academy, it's not me. Let me know because then I got to go talk to somebody. So Shortman Ian asked about a Catacon line. They say everybody excited. I am, but at the same time, I'm disappointed that we haven't had as much turnout this year. It seems like I don't know what's different. I don't know if we picked a bad weekend. I don't know what the case is, but we seem to have less turnout this year than we had last year, even though we've done a much better job, or Tom has done a much better job promoting it. So excited for the panels, but both of the games I had planned on running, neither one of them are actually going to run at this point. So that's disappointing. Yes, Susannah.
What's that?
So we run a convention every year called a Catacon. And
that's fun.
a Catacon line is our virtual online convention that we do about halfway through. So this coming weekend, we basically have a bunch of DMs that are volunteering to run games over the internet. They're all free to play. We do ask if anyone has fun. If they want to donate, they can, but there's no expectation that they will. And we also have a bunch of panels that we're doing this year. Caleb's running one on gaming in the UK. I'm doing one on DMing. We got a panel on world building. We got a panel on being a good player. So we've got a bunch of different podcasting personalities. We're going to do the panels over Twitch, and then they'll be archived on YouTube and on the audio-only feed.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I think there's QCC on that weekend, but on one hand, we don't have a great turnout in terms of players, but like last year, we got a great turnout in terms of game masters. So last year already I had to cancel my table because I didn't have enough players. This year I had 2, then 1, so my Cat Tulu is not happening. So
I did see though just yesterday somebody got 4 tickets. So somebody jumped into some games yesterday, and I think actually Ian, both of his games are almost full. So good job, Ian. So thank you. He's running some games for us as well. So his are going. And then I also think the Calvin's Fantasy version of Masks, the like the old cartoon from the 80s with the cars, he's got a full table now, or he's got enough to play. Which actually, that's the game I would jump in to play, but I can't because I have something going on that morning. So unfortunately, I can't. So one question we usually ask everybody, Susannah, so I'll ask you this, and I asked Caleb, I don't think I've asked you before. If you were a action figure, what 3 items would come in the packaging with your action figure? Or what 3 accessories would be in your package?
So this is like me, like my person as an action figure.
Yep.
Probably a microphone, a computer, and a wall for me to beat my head against. That's not serious. Probably a cat. Like I could have one of my cats.
Perfect.
Cool.
I have 2 little ginger kitties.
All right.
I'm
So,
really surprised one of them hasn't like walked on the back of my couch. Like I had one lay down with me for a little while. If you saw me like staring at something like off to the left, it was because right. It was because I had a cat and I wanted to pet it.
nice. Oh, I love kitty cats. All right. So,
Yeah.
Caleb, I can't remember if I've ever asked you the question, but you can go ahead and answer it. If you were an action figure, what would be your 3 accessories that come in your package?
Well, quite simply, I would have my faithful, no, I don't have it here, Zoom H4n recorder with its microphones for sure, because I go everywhere with it on conventions, etc.
I got you covered, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Such a great piece of equipment. I got a slightly older version, but yeah, it's awesome piece of equipment.
It is.
I would have probably a little backpack, but which is to put the zoom in it, and my kick scooter, which I used to go everywhere around London, which is not electric. People keep asking me that. It's electric. Then no, I just use my feet.
Oh, nice. All right. So, Shortman Ian actually asked Susannah, do you research any local Florida legends or mysteries for inspiration for the game that you play?
Not exactly. The first one is kind of Florida inspired. The second one is a Native American inspired monster, but I don't want to spoil. No, the third one is, but those episodes aren't even out yet, so I can't say anything about those. But the first one, I made it one of the. I'll just tell you what it is because like they figure it out like instantaneously what it is. The second one was a lot harder for him, but the first monster, it was a giant alligator. And I did it because when I was telling my players like where we were going to be setting, and it's like one of them made an offhand comment. It's like, oh, you know what? I want to fight like a giant alligator. We're like in Florida, and they're in the swamps. We should fight a giant alligator. And I'm like, okay.
Careful what you wish for.
So yeah, I don't usually research specific monsters to Florida because the way my world works is that there's basically like there's these rifts that open up, and they're connected to this other world where they're monsters, kind of like the Upside Down, but with many more monsters. And so certain areas of the world are just like hotbeds for this, and this little town, Thornvale, is one of them. And so these monsters can come from anywhere. Like there are certain areas where monsters are more likely to visit just because they like it. So like there's certain like monsters that are like, you know, they're like specifically English monsters or like specifically German monsters. But I like pulling monsters from anywhere. So my players like fighting different kinds of monsters. So I like to provide them different kind of monsters.
Yeah, right. Well, New
Any
York.
French monster?
What's that?
Did you get any French monster?
Oh,
on
yeah,
your
French
show?
monsters.
I have not had a French monster. We have had a gator, which is I guess an American monster. We had a Celtic monster, and we had a Native American inspired monster. And then the 2 monsters that I have so far for my upcoming Twitch show that I'm going to be playing with other people. So far, I have an Irish monster and an Indian, like the country India monster that's inspired from there. So
Did they ever enter a bar together?
say what?
Did the Irish monster and the English monster enter the bar at some point?
It's funny because in the Irish campaign, I guess the setting that I have, most of the action is supposed to take place in a bar.
Nice. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both once again. Thank you to those listening and chatting with us, Shortman Ian and New York Tater. Always a pleasure to have you folks in with us. It always makes the show, just for me, it seems like it's more fun when people are chatting to each other and asking us questions. So thank you for that. My last plug is go listen to Dark Discovery. We are releasing what used to be our patron-only actual play. It's a 5th edition actual play. I'm very proud of it. I think it is one of the best things that we've ever done. And there's a lot of really cool stuff like experimental DMing that I was doing. The episode that just came out this week, episode 4, I start with a cold open like in a TV show that's a flash forward, but I didn't tell the players what was going on. I just started describing where they were, and then once we got to a cutting point. I stopped it, and then we had to figure out how to get back there. Again, this was all just improv.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know that it worked. You can listen. You tell me if you think it did. But I think Dark Discovery is a great show. I'm hoping more people will listen to it. And the goal was that we are going to start a new campaign right around the time that this one ends. So, all right. So with that, we will give everybody the awkward wave out as I look for the button to turn everything off. So thank you both for joining me. Thank you in chat, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.